I call this public hearing to order. The purpose of the public hearing is to address the Board of Trustees on the proposed legislation to amend the terms of service for the mayor and trustees from 2 years, subject to permissive referendum. Before I open up for public comment, I wanted to let you know that I pulled that resolution from this evening's agenda, and we will reintroduce the legislation in August. Currently, the legislation calls for this to be subject to permissive referendum. However, I've been speaking with some residents throughout the village and received some emails. I've spoken with my colleagues on the village board. The more that I think about it and the more that I listen to input, I think that this should be a decision that is made by the Village of Tivoli. And so rather than have this be subject to a permissive referendum, we will open this to a mandatory referendum. However, it will not be on the agenda this evening because I want to reintroduce this legislation to council so that they have an opportunity to amend the resolution to call for the mandatory referendum. I'm not sure on the dates and so on and so forth that we need to go into that particular resolution, so I'm going to amend it and pull it for this evening. However, the public hearing is open, and I will allow the public hearing to take place until August, and we'll extend public comment period until August. We were doing this by resolution, so a public hearing is not mandatory for this, but I thought an issue like this required public comment. So at this point, the floor is open. Before you give your comments, which will be limited to 3 minutes, please give your name and your address, and please direct your comments directly to the board. So at this point, is there anyone wishing to address the board on the proposed legislation to amend the terms of service for the mayor and trustees from 2 years to 4 years? Seeing none, the public hearing...
Wait.
Go ahead, Karen.
Karen Cleveland, 72 Broadway, Tivoli. First of all, thank you for making that to be a decision decided by the Village of Tivoli people. I think that's the right way to go. I printed out a copy of our budget, and when I look at the amount that we've spent on an election, it says the actual spent 2012 was $305. That seems to me to be such a small amount of money that the village pays for an election. It's not even probably 0.1% of our budget. And I think that if we really need to find money in the budget, I think we ought to be looking a little bit harder at the election. So I'm happy that it'll come up to both budgets.
Anyone else? Peter Renee, sorry.
That's the voice.
Go ahead, Peter Renee, go ahead.
No. Go ahead.
Go ahead next.
Okay. Vince the voice, 90 Richmond Street. I feel exactly what Karen just said, that it should be up to the people of this village to vote on whether it's going to be with that. I think if you go to a 4-year term for the mayor, I think it should be a term limit of 2 terms. That's it. I mean, when you start going to adding 8 years, people can have problems with the officials that's trying to make decisions for the taxpayers. You two represent us as taxpayers and not yourselves. And I just feel that if you go into any kind of long terms, there should be term limits and no more than 2 terms if you go to a 4-year term.
Peter? What address are you? I'm sorry.
Peter Monty,
78.
And I mean, just echoing what other people are here saying, I think several things about the proposed legislation. First and foremost, I think it's kind of a silly waste of time, ultimately. I don't think you're really going to be saving that much. I have to take you at your word and assume the best when you say that the the purpose of this is to save the village a little bit of money, right? And I would propose to you that, although I know it's the fashion within certain political persuasions to be slavishly devoted to an orthodoxy of cut, 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 I think that that might look good for you within certain circles. It might look good for you down the road when you have that on your resume. But in the present, in the meantime, it's not always necessarily a good thing. And it comes back to what Vince is saying. It's a matter of who you're representing. And I think it's important that you represent the village and not either potentially, and I'm not saying that this is the case, but yourself or the interests of art and in terms of philosophy and ideology. And I think cut, cut, cut is always the answer. I consider myself somewhat of a fiscal conservative.
Excuse me, Pete, could you speak up? Because we're having the
Okay.
air conditioner, we can't hear you.
I consider myself somewhat of a fiscal conservative in as much as I don't like to see money wasted. But I don't think that democracy is money wasted. This is such a minuscule portion. I mean, you would say orders of magnitude more than this by switching, say, to the water bill being delivered electronically, which of course you can't really do because not everybody gets email. But I think that there are probably other areas where you're going to be able to save that money. And with all the cuts going on, I don't want the perception ultimately to be that the decision to cut costs is more important than the decision to have a village inhabited. So I would look, I guess, maybe more short-term than long-term. And I think also in this present political climate, I think the idea of reducing accountability of elected officials by extending term limits, I think is probably maybe not really the way to go. I'll just leave it at that. And
Thank you. Thank you. Anyone else want to address the board?
My name is Emily Mangieri, and I live at 5085 from 9G. And I just agree with the other village members that I do think that it should be 2-year terms. And I am glad that you are taking it to be a vote rather than a decision made by the board. I feel that that's important as a village voter and as a resident of Tivoli to be part of such a big decision. Have it lay on the hands of 5 people as opposed to all of our hands. I think that it's a good idea that you rescinded that and made it a public vote.
Anyone else want to address the board?
I have a very quick question to this follow. I have a pretty clear idea of where general sentiment in the room might be, but what I'm curious about is, have you actually gotten any voices actually in support from the community?
I've talked, I said to the board earlier today, I've spoken to residents, and it's mixed. I've had some residents say, absolutely no.
But you have actually
I've had
residents
people,
say,
yeah,
this is a great idea.
I don't know if they use the word great, but there were people that said, look, most of the, and this is an opportunity for me to speak, or the board to speak, but I will just address it. I have had residents who've said to me, look, so many times the village elections are uncontested. And whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, it's up to the residents to decide.
You can be here as long as you want. Really? All
Yeah.
practically speaking.
Yeah. But no, I have had residents that have said the elections are uncontested. If you can save a couple $100 a year, it's a couple $100 extra that can go towards something else. So it has been mixed. And I said that to the board today in an email that I sent to them, that I have had people say to me, no, they don't agree with it. And I have had others that said, yes, they did agree with it. So.
Do you have an idea of the balance of that?
I don't know. But it's been mixed. And as I said, I've been listening to everybody, people that have even come in on my Tuesday nights to talk to me.
Which I seem to miss you.
You know where to find me. And I know where to find you. Anyone else wanting to address the board?
Sorry, maybe I came in too late, but my question to the board is there an argument other... Oh, Danielle, were you?
And your address, Danielle, I'm sorry.
60 Broadway?
60 Broadway.
Is there a reason other than an economic argument that's being made to support the switch to 4-year term?
The reason that I had proposed, and again, this is an opportunity for the board to get into too much detail because we do want to hear from you. one of the reasons that I had proposed this first was the economic factor. We spend a few $100s a year. Not only that, to administer the elections, it's a lot of time before, during, and after the elections that is placed upon the clerk's office. And as the village continues to grow, our clerks are doing more and more work. And administering our own elections has become a project for us on top of everything else. So we're doing this every single year. That was one of the other reasons. My also thought was that, you get someone in and they're a trustee or a mayor for a year and a half, and they may be in the middle of a project and they have to turn around again and start campaigning. My concern was that you're going to be spending time on campaigning, they're also working on a project, they're also working on a family life, and so on and so forth. The Village of Red Hook, the town of Red Hook have 4-year terms. There's other towns and municipalities that have 4-year terms. There are others that have 2-year terms. The first was the economic, the other was the impact that it is on the office. And my third thought was that you may be 75% into a project and you're working tirelessly on a project, and you have to not only work on a project, that you're going to go out, you're going to campaign, you're also going to deal with everything else that goes on in your life. So it was a factor of all different things.
Matthew Cabal, in 35 Broadway.
35 Broadway.
You can't put a price on democracy, and you're talking about first you're talking about uncontested elections, which admittedly there's a few that I skip because no one's running against you or Mark Molinaro.
I've had people run against me before. That's
well, and you're talking about taking time out campaigning. I can't see the rationale for that. You might have a day or so that you walk in. I can't see that it's taking any time. And democracy is an active part of the community. 2 years isn't there's other things that I'm sure are going to weigh on your mind, and running out and asking a few people to come vote for you. It just makes no sense. I'm not for expanding 4 years, especially in a small village like this. We want accountability.
John Platt from 19 Broadway. If it's good enough for the House of Representatives, it's good enough for us.
I don't know if I'd use the House of Representatives as a model, but
if we have to pay $1 a piece to keep an eye on our government, I think it's money well spent.
Thank you, Tim. That was Peter Bonet, by the way, in the chairing section. Anybody else willing to address the board? Yes.
Phyllis Palmer, 24 North Road. Yeah, I actually just felt I had really hurt feelings about the idea. Personally, it felt so personal to me. It felt like we are going to take away your right to vote. And it's an emotional thing. It feels terrible. As an American, the one thing I have, no matter what hell is going on up there, the one thing I can do, the only thing I can do half the time is at least vote. So when somebody suggests that I have to pass it up for another 2 years, it just feels terrible to me. It feels upsetting. It feels like the beginning of something that already feels like it's starting to happen in terms of Big Brother and just people staying. I mean, if the president says now we're going to stay in office for 8 years, how would you feel? So I know this is on a very small level, but this is where it starts. This is where we identify. This is where we begin to participate in our government. And I've been here for a long time. I've voted all the time. I'm consistent. And I just have to say that it hurt me personally.